Have you ever been in a crowded room, surrounded by laughter, conversations, people who seemed perfectly at ease, and still felt completely, utterly alone? Not physically alone. Alone in a way that is much harder to explain. Like you are watching everyone else from behind glass, able to see them clearly, but unable to truly reach them. If that feeling is familiar, I want you to stay with me for a moment. Because what you are experiencing has a name, a reason, and I promise, you are far from the only one who feels this way. This video is for the person who can hold a conversation with almost anyone, but rarely feels truly understood. For the one who overthinks social situations long after they are over, replaying every word and wondering what went wrong. For the person who is perceptive enough to see through small talk, but does not always know how to get past it. Today we are going to explore the psychology behind why high intelligence and deep loneliness so often walk hand in hand, and more importantly, why this is not a flaw in you. It is a feature of how your mind works. Here is something most people never talk about. When you are highly intelligent, your brain is not just processing more information, it is processing it differently. You naturally search for meaning beneath the surface. You notice patterns other people miss. You ask questions that make others uncomfortable because they simply do not have the answers. And this is exactly where the isolation begins. Most everyday social interaction runs on a kind of surface code: weekend plans, trending news, light humor, easy agreement. There is nothing wrong with any of that. But for someone whose mind is constantly working at a deeper frequency, those conversations can feel like trying to run a symphony through a single small speaker. The richness gets lost in translation. Psychologists describe this as the depth gap, the invisible divide that forms when one person's internal world operates at a level of complexity that the conversations around them simply cannot match. Think about a time you tried to share something you genuinely cared about, a philosophical question, an emotional pattern you had noticed, something that truly mattered to you, and watch the other person's eyes gloss over. That look is not rejection, even though it often feels exactly like rejection. It is a gap between what you needed to say and what that moment had the capacity to hold. And the painful irony is that the very mind that makes you remarkable, the one that sees more, feels more, questions more, is often the same mind that leaves you feeling unreachable to the people around you. Now here is the paradox that makes this kind of loneliness particularly confusing and particularly painful. You might be surrounded by people every single day. You might have friends, family, co-workers, maybe even people who genuinely care about you. You might be the one everyone comes to for advice, the good listener, the thoughtful presence, the one who always knows what to say. And yet, at the end of the day, you return home feeling hollow, unseen, like you spent hours performing a version of yourself, but never actually got to show up as the real one. Researchers distinguish between two very different kinds of loneliness. Social loneliness is about not having enough people around. Existential loneliness, the kind highly intelligent people are far more vulnerable to, is about not being truly known by the people who are already there. A study published in the journal Personality and Individual Differences found that individuals with higher cognitive complexity, meaning they naturally perceive more dimensions in situations and relationships, reported significantly greater feelings of existential loneliness than their peers. Not because they had fewer relationships, but because they needed more depth from the ones they had. So if you have ever asked yourself, why do I feel this alone when I am not even by myself? That question is not irrational. It is the completely logical result of a mind that requires more than most environments are naturally built to provide. Let me walk you through 7 signs that what you are experiencing is this specific kind of loneliness. Not a character flaw, not a social disorder, but a reflection of how deeply your mind engages with the world around you. Number 1. You find most small talk exhausting. Not because you are shy or antisocial, but because it rarely leads anywhere. You are always waiting for the conversation to go somewhere real, and it almost never does. Number 2. You often feel like the most self-aware person in the room, and that awareness isolates you. You can see your own patterns, other people's patterns, and the dynamics between you, all at once. It It is a heavy thing to carry silently. Number 3. You have a small number of genuinely deep connections and struggle to maintain many casual ones. Surface-level friendships feel like a performance that drains you faster than it fills you. Number 4. You frequently feel misunderstood, not because people are unkind, but because they respond to what you said, not what you actually meant. Number 5. You replay conversations in your head long after they end, analyzing them for meaning or missed signals. Your brain does not let things settle because it is still trying to fully understand them. Number 6. You are powerfully drawn to people who challenge you intellectually or emotionally, and you feel a quiet ache when you cannot seem to find them. Number 7. You sometimes wonder if something is fundamentally different about you, why you cannot just feel satisfied with light, easy social connection the way others around you seem to be. If several of these feel true, I want you to hear this clearly. There is nothing wrong with you. Your loneliness is not a disorder. It is a mismatch between the depth of your inner world and the environments most of us are placed in by default. Here is where it becomes even harder. Because not only does the depth gap create loneliness, your brain then processes that loneliness in a way that deepens it further. When you are highly intelligent, you are also highly analytical. And when you feel pain, your mind does not simply feel it. It studies it. It asks, why do I always end up feeling this way? What is wrong with me? Why does connection seem so effortless for everyone else? And before long, you have built an entire internal narrative about yourself as someone who is fundamentally unreachable. Psychologists call this ruminative processing, an amplified, self-reinforcing loop of analysis that individuals with high cognitive ability are significantly more prone to. Research has found that higher verbal intelligence is associated with more frequent rumination, particularly following moments of social disconnection or perceived rejection. Your brain is genuinely trying to solve the problem. But loneliness is not a problem the analytical mind can think its way out of alone. In fact, the more intensely you analyze it, the lonelier it can make you feel, because analysis pulls you deeper into your head and further from the present moment, which is the only place real connection actually happens. This does not mean you should stop thinking. It means understanding what your brain is doing, so you can gently interrupt the loop before it finishes rewriting your story about who you are and what you deserve. There is something important to name here that often goes unacknowledged. This kind of loneliness carries real consequences, not just emotional ones. Chronic existential loneliness, even when you are not physically isolated, has been linked to elevated cortisol levels, disrupted sleep, and greater vulnerability to depression and anxiety. When your nervous system is continuously signaling that something essential is missing, the body eventually keeps the score. And for highly intelligent people, there is almost always an extra layer of shame sitting on top of the loneliness. Because you are perceptive enough to notice that others do not seem to struggle with this in the same way. You tell yourself you should be able to figure it out. You dismiss your own pain because you can intellectually argue yourself out of taking it seriously. But dismissing it does not make it disappear. It just goes underground. And underground, it quietly reshapes how much you allow yourself to be seen, how much you let people in, how much you trust that genuine connection is even possible for someone like you. You deserve more than a life spent half-hidden. You deserve to be known, not despite your depth, but because of it. So where does this leave you? Because I do not want to leave you with only an explanation. I want to leave you with something real you can carry forward. The first thing to understand is this. The answer is not to become less deep. It is not to lower your standards for connection or to convince yourself to feel satisfied with conversations that do not actually feed you. That is not growth. That is suppression. The real shift begins when you stop treating your loneliness as evidence that something is broken inside you and start treating it as a compass. Your loneliness is pointing toward something. It is telling you what you actually need: depth, authenticity, the feeling of being genuinely understood, and it is giving you information about which relationships and environments are worth pursuing and which ones are quietly costing you more than they give. Second, your people exist. There are others out there who process the world the way you do. They are reading books most people have never encountered. They are having conversations at midnight about things that genuinely matter. They are in therapy working through layers most people will never touch. Finding them requires something uncomfortable. You have to be willing to show up as yourself. Not the polished, careful version that has learned to perform connection, but the version that actually wants to be known. That kind of openness is terrifying. I understand. But it is also the only door that opens to the kind of connection you truly need. And third, perhaps the most important thing I can offer you, begin the practice of being a kind and steady companion to yourself. Journaling, therapy, creative expression, solitude that restores rather than empties you. These are not replacements for human connection. They are the foundation that makes real connection possible. Because the more fully you inhabit your own mind with compassion instead of criticism, the less you need others to validate what you already know to be true about who you are. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are someone who needs something real. And that is one of the most profoundly human things there is. Let us bring it all together. Highly intelligent people often feel lonely not because they are broken or antisocial, but because of the depth gap, the distance between how deeply they experience the world and what most social environments are built to offer. This creates a specific, existential kind of loneliness that is real, valid, and rooted in genuine psychology. Your brain's tendency to ruminate amplifies the pain, but the loneliness itself is a compass pointing toward what you need, not a verdict on your worth. Your people exist. Depth is not a burden you have to carry alone. It is something worth finding the right people to share. If this video put words to something you have felt but never been fully able to name, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, which of those 7 signs felt most like your life? Your answer might be exactly what someone else scrolling right now needs to feel less alone. And if this kind of content, psychology, intelligence, emotional depth, the things we quietly carry, speaks to you, subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. There is so much more to explore together.